This show is sponsored by Mighty Capital, the go-to venture capital firm for product-first companies like Airbnb and Amplitude. Learn why they are dubbed the best value for the dollar invested at mighty.capital. I'm SC Moadi, founder and chair of Products That Count, a 501c3 nonprofit engaging over 500,000 product managers. Our mission is simple: help you build great products through groundbreaking research, prestigious awards, and top-notch programming like this award-winning Top 1% podcast. Whether you're aiming to boost your career or turn your product team into a competitive advantage, this is your gateway. Visit productsthatcount.org and begin your product leadership journey. This particular series is hosted by one of the first chief product officers in the world, Renee Niemi, and each episode is a masterclass in product leadership. Renee, over to you.
Well, good afternoon. I have with me today Tushar Shah, who is the Chief Product Officer of Uniphore. First of all, Tushar, let me just say congratulations on being a finalist on our top CPO awards this year. Job well done. How does it feel to be one of the best CPOs in the world?
It's very humbling, and honestly, I know some of the other folks that were actually on the list that I've worked with previously, or I know them through the various product organizations, and so obviously, it's an honor to be in that group of cohorts that were selected, both for the overall process, but even for the folks that are being potentially identified as a set of finalists. So it's definitely very humbling, and it's an honor.
Well, it's well deserved. Really looking forward to our conversation today. Before we jump in, why don't we start by, in 60 minutes or less, we would love to get a quick introduction to you, your company, and specifically the role, the function you perform at.
Yeah. So I'm Tushar Shah. I'm the Chief Product Officer at Uniphore. As you mentioned, Uniphore is the largest enterprise AI native company. It was founded in 2008. We have well over 1,600 customers in 20 different countries, over 750,000 users using our products and services today. And obviously, with the generative AI hype that has happened over the last 12 to 18 months, we have found ourselves right in the middle of it. And so as we've moved from traditional neural network, deep learning, AI, we've now obviously advanced our capabilities, leveraging large language models of various capabilities. And so the products and services that we create are continuing to evolve. And because we grew up as a SaaS company, we also have grown in as a platform company. So we actually bring both the platform and the SaaS solutions to the enterprises so that they can actually enable their AI journey to occur and be successful.
Wow. So this has to have been just a wild ride for you for the last couple of years. I would just love to know, like, your insight on what a couple of what you think leading applications are of your product. And did that change over the last year?
Yeah, so I think, for me, having been at some of the previous companies where, for example, risk and compliance were very much AI forward type of businesses, at my time at PayPal and the like, coming into Uniphore and it being a broader AI enterprise-based solution, mainly focused in both the CX and CS space as well as the sales area, we have seen the applicability of AI now across multiple enterprise functions. And so as we continue to drive through our products in the area of call center and sales, because of our platform enablement around large language models and our ability to think about not only large language models, but even small language models that are specific to industry and business use cases, we think that we actually have an enterprise-based solution that can support the broader enterprise in any one of their functions in the future, whether it be HR, whether it be finance, and so on and so forth. And so we see that the opportunity of having a platform that drives knowledge management, AI at scale, model as a service capabilities will allow us to really support an enterprise that's looking at how to leverage generative AI across their various enterprise functions and business units.
Fascinating. We're going to have to spend a little more time on that in a minute.
Yep.
But before we dive into the technicalities of product technology, I want to learn a little bit more about you. So tell we all kind of, product management isn't something you typically go to school for, although that's changing. So we all have different journeys into the top role in product. Tell me a defining moment in your career when you had an aha saying, this is the career for me, and I'm so glad I'm here.
Yeah, I would say that it probably came, I think you and I mentioned this a little bit, is that, product management, just based on, my age and where I am in my career, wasn't something that you actually jumped into when my career first started. I would say definitely as the internet boom took off in the 2000s, you started to see a greater role for product management. I think there were traditional product management roles when you thought about like products that maybe banking and telecom and other folks provided. So for me, I think it showed up in two areas. One was when I worked in Europe and helping local PTTs and postal telecom companies deal with telecom deregulation. They were trying to understand how do they create product plans that would mimic the US around unlimited calling. So that was probably my first foray into the concept of product management and thinking through what does a customer need and how does a company acquire a customer and potentially maintain that customer for life. And then ultimately it continued to evolve at my time at Bank of America and PayPal. But I think it's mainly shine-lighted here at Uniphore because of just how important the leveraging of generative AI solutions to an enterprise and their end customer is extremely important in being able to recognize both the enterprise's value, but ultimately the customer satisfaction and how that enterprise supports the customer.
Yeah, isn't it fulfilling when you see the impact of your work in kind of the real world? Like,
Correct.
hey, I solved that problem, or my team solved that problem, and I know for me, I was in consumer products.
Yep.
A good portion of my career, and I used to call them sightings. But when I would have a sighting of one of my products in the wild,
Yep. Yeah, it was very cool. It was definitely, I've had the opportunity to work on both enterprise and consumer-based products, and definitely you see that immediate thrill in the consumer space, especially when you have a product that's on a mobile device and people are using it every day. Clearly on the PayPal side around and Venmo with regards to the monetary exchange of P2P payments, but even now at Uniphore, with our U products and how enterprises are leveraging it to better support their customers when they call and they have challenges. It's really great to see.
Yeah. Is there any one person who's had an unproportionate impact on your professional career?
I think there are probably a couple in various aspects, but I think when I think about products specifically, there are two individuals that definitely can't come to mind. One is Bill Reddy, who is the CEO at Pinterest. So I worked for him directly when he was the chief product officer and led product at PayPal. He definitely had a significant impact on my product thinking and how do I view both the customer, the products we create, and how does that impact both the customer's lives, but also the company's financial outcomes and growth. And then the second definitely was David Marcus, who was the CEO at PayPal at a point, eventually went to Meta to lead their payments, and now is at Lightspark. I would say probably one of the greatest product thinkers in the Valley that I've ever met. His ability to understand user experiences and how to create great product definitely played a contributing role in just how diligent he was at how to view the customer, how the customer views your product.
So with those two mentors, if you will, it sounds like you've been blessed. Any takeaways that you want to share that might be helpful for anybody who's listening?
Yeah, I think what I would say is that through both of those individuals, what I discovered is that if you do right by the customer, the financial outcomes that you potentially might be worried about can still be realized. I think there were decisions that we had made around how a product should function or behave because we were concerned about a financial outcome that the company would suffer or potentially get impacted by. And so we didn't do right by the customer because of that. And in the end, Bill and David and others had the forthright and the courage to say, if you do right by the customer, your volumes will increase, your engagement will increase, and all of those types of things. And so the outcomes you're afraid of will potentially not materialize, and they will show up in a different way.
Yeah, I think that's really, really great advice. Um, it's easy to fix a business problem if you have a great product.
Correct. And so that's why when I think about my product thinking and strategy, it's not to create a wall garden, because in the end, that's where you potentially get yourself into trouble, because you need to think about every customer interaction and kind of how they might use your product and what's important to them, and therefore have that ability to have that level of flexibility.
Yeah, exactly. Well, as you know, this last year has been filled with opportunities and excitement. In the previous year, there was a little interpretation as we came out of COVID, and the year before that was COVID. So it's been a really exciting few years.
Yep.
Navigating external factors perspective. I would love to understand how that all culminates into where your focus is, your personal focus is. What's on your mind?
Yeah, I think so. One, it's really helping my employees and my teammates as they kind of transition from this working from home to now this hybrid working, trying to be agile, meeting with customers, getting on the plane, and so on and so forth. So some of those kind of things that I think we had taken for granted, and now because of COVID, kind of having to relearn or re-engage on those customer engagements, customer listening, meeting the customer where they are, doing side by sides with them, and those types of things. I think that has been an area as a leader, kind of transitioning people back to where we probably were prior to COVID around that level of engagement and interaction. And then I think, as we talked about, is just with the hype cycle around generative AI and AI in general, is how do you use that technology to, one, drive your product thinking and your approaches, but ultimately, how do you then also help your end customer?
Yeah. Um, uh, I think navigating that AI hype is a really big deal. What about your team and how you're thinking about your team in terms of expansion, contraction?
Yep.
Has that been impacted at all from the last couple of years?
Yeah, I think as I mentioned, right, as potentially the work infrastructure or work approach changes, levels of flexibility, people's locations play a part. For me, diversity is extremely important. So diversity of thought, and so typically, whenever I think about how my team is structured, having that diversity of thought is important. also, when I think about many of us work in a geographically spread environment where a lot of our engineers might be in places like India or Israel and other locations. And to me, it's important that product management and engineering leadership and engineers are somewhat co-located, or at least have a level of significant time zone overlap, because it's really important for those two sets of or thought leaders to be working together on a regular basis. And so a lot of times when I think about my organizational structure, I'll look at kind of what my engineering counterpart, how he or she is set up geographically, and then I'll ensure that we have the right level of product management coverage and accountability and ownership in those regions to sit side by side, or at least have a level of overlap with their engineering teams.
Yeah, it's interesting because I'm going to call it now the pre-COVID days, but when we were physically co-located in offices, there was a lot of serendipitous moments that would happen, and sometimes those moments can create breakthroughs, if you
Right.
will. How do you recreate that?
Yeah, and so I think that as I mentioned, right, that's where kind of thinking about how, as we go now, in a post-COVID world, how do you think about where folks are located? Budgets may not always support people getting on a plane and being able to go places, and so it is around structuring the team effectively. So understanding, like I said, with who my product leaders need to interact with, who they need to engage in on a day-to-day basis, making sure that as much as possible they're either co-located or there's a level of overlap, um, but also getting out there in front of the customer. To me, you can't be a good product manager unless you are doing that level of product discovery and customer discovery, because we all can theorize what we think is what the product needs to do and how it needs to behave. We could talk to analysts, we could talk to sales folks, but hearing it directly from the customer is super impactful.
Yeah, and so when you say co-located, it's physically co-located, not.
Yeah, or like there be an overlap of time zone, at least 4 or 5 hours of overlap.
Got it. Okay. Um, yeah, it's just such an interesting challenge when everybody working from home. Like,
Right.
how do you keep that magic?
Right.
Is fascinating. Do you have any stories that you could share on where you've been able to really make magic happen because of this co-location?
Yeah, I think we have offices today in Chennai and Bangalore and even in Tel Aviv. And so, what we've had to do is, sometimes based on talent or skill set, we've had to kind of move certain product functions or responsibilities for a release based on where the engineering team might be located. And so, what we've actually had to do is start to better cross train our product management leaders and thinkers to be much more cross product. And so the good thing is that a lot of the core, because we lead with a platform, a lot of the platform capabilities are common across all of our products. So there's a level of consistency that all of our product managers have the experience with, which is both at the AI and platform level. It's more just kind of the nuance within the functionality. And that's where we try to make sure that our product managers are engaged with customers and sales folks. And so what we've had to do sometimes is make product level shifts where we've actually, someone might have been working on, for example, our UAssist product out of Tel Aviv, but because of the fact that the work had to be done, or some portion of the work for AI had to be done out of India, we would then leverage a product leader who would be a supplemental member of that UAssist team to be able to get the AI work done, so that they could drive some of the magic, as you call it, without having to deal with some of the constraints of time zone and language and those types of things.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. One of the toughest things we have to do as product leaders is figure out um, not just the short term product
Right.
roadmap, but kind of where we're going. Like, what's the vision? What's the midterm roadmap look like? Especially when there's big investments, big spend that needs to happen. Can you share with us kind of your thoughts and process for figuring out what the next big thing is?
Yeah, so it's a great question because actually we're there now where we lead with our applications, our U Assist, U Self Serve, and U Analyze and U Capture on our Q product that are end customer or end user at the enterprise level applications. But as we've had the conversation about with customers around how we deploy these products on our X platform, because of our AI knowledge and our AI capabilities and the breadth of knowledge we have around generative AI, customers have come to us and said, "Well, what about this platform?" Because actually, we're trying to figure out how do we leverage the knowledge within our ecosystem and leverage generative AI against our knowledge so that we reduce hallucinations and be able to provide the right type of context that is associated with our policies, procedures, or our product or our pricing, so on and so forth. And so what we've discovered is that they're asking us to essentially productize our platform, where we actually make the platform enabled to a customer so that they can actually do some of this, data synthesis, data creation, data, cleansing, getting their knowledge repositories at a level where a large language model can then you can do some fine tuning and pre-training activities, and so it's a great PLG type of approach where we led with our products and our platform, which ultimately led to the fact that the platform became extremely interesting from a product-led perspective, and so now we're in the process of productizing certain core functions within the platform and making that available to customers.
Yeah, it almost feels like, to use an analogy, that you started by telling time, and now you're going to evolve and start selling clocks.
Correct. That's right.
Yeah, that's a great story. I would love to build on that a little bit. As you were talking, I was thinking to myself, there's one thing being a product leader for a SaaS platform where you have to start really thinking about, short and long-term implications of AI. But how does a company that's actually delivering AI think about short and long-term implications of AI as it relates to your business,
Yeah.
not your customer's business?
Yeah, that's a great question. And in fact, we have various goals internally. We started very early with a couple of groups last year, obviously technology, marketing, and some other areas where we said, let's eat our own dog food. Let's actually leverage generative AI and AI capabilities in those areas of our business and see how much we can transform. And so we actually did that in certain sectors of both the technology team and marketing. And now we actually have in this year a broader goal that every organization at Uniphore is going to leverage AI in some form or fashion of their work and really drive a level of efficiency so that we can almost mimic what our customers are trying to do within their own environment.
Interesting. So, what are a couple of the most efficient applications that you're seeing come out of
Yeah,
that?
so we, for example, in our sales and marketing space, we created a knowledge repository and an ability to create pipeline within our technology teams. We leveraged some generative AI solutions to drive cloud cost reduction. Now within, for example, the product organization, I'm looking to deploy some generative AI knowledge capability around how we create user stories, and where there are like for like user stories that are replicable across like horizontal functions like the platform or AI that multiple products could benefit from. And how do you actually, instead of rewriting that user story, you know, and having a product manager in different parts of the product organization potentially write it differently, but it's in the same component or service in the tech stack. How do we write that and say, okay, this is a universal requirement and it needs to be applied across all the U portfolio products?
Yeah, fascinating. How much time would you say this is going to save your organization
Yeah, I
over?
think I think it's well, it's hard to always quantify the savings. I think I would hope at least double digit 10, 15, 20% of time and effort. And so therefore product managers can be thinking about other unique user stories or features that need to be created. But I think more than anything, it also allows our developers and engineers to then therefore build it once and replicate it multiple times. And so we'll definitely see some probably savings as well in the software delivery lifecycle as well, and even on the testing side.
Yeah, yeah, fantastic. Great story. Shifting gears for a moment, I would love to hear. Obviously, you've got years and years experience. You've been doing this for a while, and we all kind of have our own favorite best practice. Would share with us what your one best practice that is what you believe it has the highest impact to both your success as well as your team's success. And it could be, here at Uniphore, it could
Yeah,
be best practice you pulled forward through your career. Up to you.
yeah. I think I probably say it's three things. One is you have to be a great listener. I think if you work in product, you have to be able to listen to all different constituents and then figure out from there, how do you prioritize and deliver on the customer outcomes based on that overall, listening and discovery. Second, I think you have to have a level of accountability and drive to execution. And then third, it's also making sure that you have that diversity of thought, not making sure that you don't hire like people, because then ultimately you're not seeing the potential nuances of what you've heard or what people have heard from customers or market analysts or salespeople, because everybody kind of thinks the same.
Yeah, I love that diversity of thought perspective. I know that I have a lot of personal stories where
Yeah,
the lack of diversity of thought
correct.
really shined. Do you have any great stories where that being one of your best practices has really helped you?
Yeah, I think, like for example, there are nuances when you work internationally, right? And so as you think about language and language support and context, um, and when you also think about AI and translation and those types of things, it's important to understand the context of language and capability, um, because if things aren't done right, you could potentially offend somebody, right? And so, from a cultural perspective, and so I think
Things
uh,
don't translate either, do they?
that's correct, exactly. And so, um, you know, like we have for example, a Q for Sales product where it's a video-based interactive model for salespeople to interact with their customers. And as you can imagine, if we operate in the Middle East or other locations, you can't see the entire facial expression, especially if they're female, because parts of their face are covered. And so, being able to take into account those types of cultural aspects are extremely important, because if you don't, and you say, well, your product key doesn't work there because it doesn't do that, it's almost like you haven't taken into account the cultural aspects, the language, the international nature of our business, right? Because That could be someone may not even be in the Middle East. It could be someone that wears a hijab and is on a call in the U.S., for example.
Yeah, absolutely. As you were mentioning this, it also, underscores the need for, diversity of thought and thinking. Given
Correct.
you're building foundational technology for AI, there's been a lot of discussion around, if AI is trained unbiased, then the future will be biased and not diverse.
Correct.
Able to use this diversity to help your products be better as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think we had a Middle East client that wanted to leverage generative AI, and what they discovered was that maybe some of the responses, because it's trained on open data and the open internet, the responses towards that overall customer or that government entity wasn't viewed as favorable. So some of the responses weren't favorable, and so we quickly understood the need to put in the right types of guardrails and safety nets to make sure that the right type of information is shared, because obviously, as I mentioned, people have various viewpoints and opinions that are shared on the open internet, and sometimes those are what gets trained against an open sourced or open model, and then they present themselves in a customer interaction, which is sometimes unfortunate.
Yeah, yeah, wow. Very, very interesting, and I'm glad you're in your role. All right. Well, our time has gone so quickly, so now it's time for me to come to my last question.
Okay.
How appropriate of a question is this? It is on AI yet again, but specifically as it relates to product management. Would love your views on how AI will affect the role of product management in the next year. And and then that same question, but in the next 3 years. And is there a difference?
Yeah. Um, so I think in the next year, you will start to see a lot of the tools that we use within product management, like AHA, DevRev, Jira, GitHub, where we essentially are crafting and defining user stories. I think you will start to see more and more AI get integrated into those types of tool sets that we use from a product management perspective. So we'll definitely see the benefit there. One of the big focuses for us here at Uniphore, because we get customer-based interaction, and as you can imagine, customer service and support, the reason why people call customer service and support is because something went wrong or something didn't work the way it was supposed to work. And so what we want to do now is start, and because I put my product management hat on, I want to be able to take that information and then therefore translate it into opportunities to create better product. So in other words, when you think about, for example, a scenario where we deal with a mobile telecom provider, their biggest call volume is in September when the new iPhone gets launched, where we have an opportunity to understand those calls and understand why customers call. And we can now help product managers actually think about, how do you do that? Like, they probably have a self-service approach on the web or through their mobile app, but for whatever reason, that doesn't seem to work. And then now the customer has to call. So we actually can now help product managers understand what within their experiences or their flow isn't actually working effectively, to be able to allow a customer to self-serve themselves and feel a seamless experience where they actually have to pick up the phone and actually have an agent who might be obviously expensive to that telecom provider now have to spend the next half hour or 30 minutes or an hour on the call with the customer to get them, to get the new upgraded phone. So I fundamentally believe that customer journeys and those types of things are going to play a huge role in how we think about leveraging AI on those customer journeys to how we create great product going forward.
Wow, I love that. That's a very um, good perspective and one that I haven't heard before, and will definitely keep me thinking. Listen, thank you so much on that. I'm just going to wrap it up and say again, congratulations, and really appreciate you spending time with me this morning.
Great. It's wonderful to meet you. And like I said, I'm honored to be considered and look forward to hearing the results.
This is SC Moadi again, founder and chair of Products That Count. Thank you for listening to this episode. If you like what you heard, be sure to leave us a review on your favorite platform, including Spotify and Apple. And please check out our other resources at productsthatcount.org. They're designed to accelerate your product career and make product the most important function in business. Until soon.